We've got Bill Stanley on the line. We're going to also tie in Joe Morrissey. So it's going to be the Joe, John, and Bill Stanley segment. So let's get Joe plugged in there. Senator Stanley, great to have you with us. Senator, I'm going to play this quick clip here because I really want to get your take on the commemorative event yesterday, which, those of us who are not from Virginia like me are just awed by the whole thing, what happened 400 years ago. But you got one of your colleagues in the House of Delegates that, came in, got an all-purpose pass because he's an elected official, and disrupted the event. I want to start with this. Kiera, let's roll that clip if we may. You have that? All right, so you had this beautiful ceremony, gentlemen. Joe's now on the line, and disrupted by one of your House colleagues, Bill Stanley. I know you were there. Your family was there with you. What was the deal with this guy?
Well, I don't know what the deal with the guy is. Obviously, he decided that he was going to be the center of attention. That could be the only reason that he decided to do what he did. And I think he thought he had to, climb the ladder of being a malcontent and a disruptor, because nobody even knows who this guy is in the House of Delegates, let alone the Senate. When he stood up, I started to get out of my chair, but here came the Capitol Police. Mm-hmm. I didn't recognize him. Only thereafter, a House of Delegates member next to me told me he was a member of the House, the newest member of the House. And it seemed that way because, I was expecting him to be tackled, or manhandled, and the Capitol Police came up to him, and then all of a sudden it was like a little 6-inch force field around him. They didn't want to touch him and manhandle him out because he was wearing the same commemorative pins that every member who was there. They gave us total access to the place. So we didn't know who he is. We don't know who he is in the House of Delegates. And if there's one piece of advice I'd give to this delegate, he better be raising as much money as he can for the House Democrats, because if we're in the majority, which I expect us to be in the House, he's going to have a lot of time in his office sitting there doing nothing.
Well, I tell you what, I thought it was disgraceful yesterday. His name is Delegate Ibrahim Samira. He's got a long history, both him and his father, of being anti-Semitic. His father, a member of Hamas. But look, he got elected late. He replaced Jennifer Busco, who won the race for state senate. So he won that special. Nobody's heard of the guy. And I guess he just wanted to get relevant. Of course, as you predicted on the phone yesterday, Bill, when we talked, he immediately went on CNN, MSNBC, and now he's a star of the left. You can become a star of the left and get a contract with CNN by disrupting rallies or disrupting an event like you had yesterday, instead of that being shown as for what it is, which is just very bad decorum, very bad behavior, something you would never want your kids to do, not in that environment. He ends up with big headlines on CNN and MSNBC. Go figure that one.
Well, that's exactly what he was intending to do. And again, he comes out of nowhere. He's not made much of a mark in the House of Delegates. I don't expect him ever to do so. Yeah, I understand he's running unopposed now, which demonstrates perhaps a lack of really good thinking up in Northern Virginia in his House district. But more importantly, what he failed to realize, and he claims this was all about free speech and that he wasn't going to just sit there politely. We have decorum, and this was a special session of the General Assembly. And we have free speech on the floor, but it is respectful. And we were not here to debate an issue, political or otherwise. And certainly by the president's speech, that was not a political partisan speech at all. This was to commemorate 400 years of representative democracy that came to the shores. Not only the imperfection of democracy, but also the imperfection of our society as well, in acknowledging that on those same shores we brought enslaved people and kept them into that enslaved servitude. And that was also highlighted by the president's speech. But that was all taken away by one dum-dum who decides that he owes no decorum, as we all owe to the chamber, and no respect to the chamber. And therefore, it's all about the Ibrahim Suriam show rather than about 400 years of representative democracy. It's a shame. It's a disgrace. And quite frankly, he's right now basking in what he believes is sunlight and warmth. And quite frankly, he's a Virginia fool.
Senator Bill Stanley, Republican, Southside Virginia. Let's get to another incoming state senator when he gets elected, Joe Morrissey, also the Joe Morrissey Show. Joe, Bill's a Republican. He didn't like what went on. You're a Democrat. What was your reaction to Delegate Samira when he came up? He had the signs and disrupted the speech yesterday of President Trump, Joe.
I was shocked. That when I first saw that somebody was standing up and got in there, my immediate reaction was, this is an outsider, certainly not a member of the Virginia General Assembly that was invited there as a guest, and I thought it was an outsider who was trying to disrupt the president and would quickly be escorted out. My shock turned to abject embarrassment when I realized and was told that that was a member of the Virginia House of Delegates. And let me be clear what's happening. You and Senator Stanley and I have spent the first 10 minutes now talking about this incident, which is exactly what he wanted, instead of talking about the event itself. And let me just reiterate what I said I called my wife after this. My wife was supposed to come down, but one of our babies got sick, so she turned around and headed back. I called her afterwards, and I said it was one of the best events I'd ever been to in my life. I'm 61 years old. I've been to sporting events, Super Bowls, the Olympics, one of the best events I'd ever been to in my life. John Meacham, the author, spoke brilliantly. His every word was measured. Every word meant something. He was great. There was a state senator from Illinois, an African-American, who is the president of the National Association of Legislators, gave a brilliant speech. The other folks that had involvement in it were good. And I'll tell you, and Trump gave an excellent speech. If you showed his speech to 100 dyed-in-the-wool Democrats, took his name off the bottom and said, read the speech, they would say it was great. It was nonpartisan. It was non-confrontational. It just embraced why we were there, to celebrate 400 years of continual democracy in the New World. And his speech was very appropriate, and I thought that Mr. Samira was disrespectful and completely out of line. And I read some of the Democrats' comments. Delegate Lee Carter said, he's not just a protester, that's my friend and fellow lawmaker, and I'm proud of him. Jennifer Boysko, whose seat he took, said he was exercising his right to free speech. I liked what U.S. Representative Elaine Luria said. She said she was shocked by Samira's protest. Okay, listen, I love free speech. I protect it. I cherish it. One of the Supreme Court justices said, protecting speech that we agree with is easy. Yeah. Protecting speech that we loathe is the hard part. That wasn't free speech. That was disrupting the president. What if every member there engaged in that little modicum of free speech? You wouldn't have had an event. So I was terribly disappointed. And let me just also say this. Anybody that missed that celebration yesterday, there were a lot of Democrats that were there, but there were a lot there that were in protest, that didn't show up because of protest. They missed a wonderful, wonderful event that they will never, ever be able to recapture.
Well, I tell you what, David Ramadan just texted in Bill Stanley, and he said, Joe Morrissey is correct. This was one of the best events ever. Bill, normally you get this kind of feedback like Joe did when he talked to his wife, Myrna. Your wife, Laura, was there. She's a tough critic on stuff. What was your wife's, Laura, reaction to this event yesterday and to the protester, who was in your own body, by the way?
Yeah, and look, she was appalled, and she understands decorum, she understands free speech, but she saw that as a completely selfish act on this person's part. She was very upset only because, my children were there. My two youngest think the world of our president, but they wanted to see, and celebrate 400 years of representative democracy in Virginia. And instead, those were the questions we got. Rather than questions of history and how we move forward, the questions we got from our children surrounded this awful display, this selfish display. And we had to explain that to them. So I know that was very upsetting to my wife, and also, to my kids, very puzzling to them as well. And you have to explain to them now that what you're seeing on TV with people just breaking down from all common decency from the radical left, we're now seeing this eke into the Commonwealth of Virginia. We're now seeing it on display in a body and in a place where it shouldn't be. Just put it in perspective. And I think this is how my wife described it to me. If that was Hillary Clinton and she was the president and she had come down and given the speech, name one Republican that would have stood up there and said or done something similar to what was done by this delegate in front of this body. And the answer is quite simply, no one would ever do it. And what is more bothersome and troublesome to me is that Joe Morrissey and I were standing in that line to get through Secret Service security. He was so funny, by the way. I loved my time with Joe, and my children just love Joe Morrissey to death, and so does my wife. But this is what this delegate did. Going through security, he laminated a board, put it into 3 parts, and stuck it somewhere on his body, and then went through a line that is a security line. So he snuck something in and did so deceptively. That goes to, in my mind, the type of person that he was willing to sneak that thing in so that he could make a point. We were all there. We were all frisked. We were all searched extensively, and he did it in a way that, quite frankly, in my mind, even though it was a board, that's still the potential was dangerous.
It's just appalling. There's no question about it. And he's one of your members. That was the thing. When we first saw the protest, it was like, well, how'd that person get in? Okay, it happens. And then you find out that he's a House of Delegates member. And then you find out that he's a vitriol anti-Semite. And then you find out some of the things that he said. And you say, okay, wow, unbelievable. Even that in Loudoun County that you could elect somebody that is such an anti-Semite as he is. The thing he said about Jews in Israel is beyond the pale, but that seems to be what some of the elected officials that win the new trend. I'm going to shift gears a minute. Got to get you both to weigh in on this. We got about 5-6 minutes remaining. Joe Morrissey has called for Justin Fairfax to sue his 2 accusers. And I had Justin on my show a week ago, who, by the way, was at the event. And as you said, Bill, looked like he was sucking lemons or something. He was not too happy there, but he was there. I'll give him credit for that. Now he comes out and he says, I'm going to sue my 2 assailants. Maybe he took Joe's advice or your advice, I don't know. But Joe, I'm going to get to you. You have called for this. Now it looks like Fairfax is going to go forward with it. What say you?
Well, I told him that the only chance of rehabilitating his reputation and continuing it is to sue the people who he felt made false allegations against him. And I believe I'm the only one that said that. I said you need to file a suit in Richmond Circuit Court and also account against that individual or individuals that planned this smear. Right. I said, if you do not do that, okay, you will never recover. You will finish serving your term as lieutenant governor, and then that will be the end of your career. And let's be clear. It's been 14 and 15 years, respectively, since the 2 allegations. The prosecutors in the 2 jurisdictions, despite letters of communication from Justin Fairfax's lawyer, Barry Pollack, to start an investigation, have done nothing. Accordingly, it's up to him now to go into Richmond Circuit Court, which is the venue I would suggest, and say, you defamed me. You said this, and this. It is false. These are the witnesses that were there. This is what they remember. And then go from there. There is no choice. Somebody says something to you, that is defamatory. You have to protect yourself.
Let's get Senator Stanley to weigh in, also a big-time lawyer. as well as a state senator like yourself, Joe. So Senator Stanley Joe's been an advocate of Justin Fairfax suing these two women for their allegations to revitalize his career as his only chance. What say you?
Well, and listen, I love Joe. I've known Joe for over 20 years, and I think he is a smart and intelligent attorney, and I tend to agree with him in terms of that posture. But here, as a lawyer, you kind of balance the two, so I'll give the other side's version. The risk that he runs if he files a lawsuit is now this becomes the spectacle that the Democrats wanted to avoid by those hearings in the House of Delegates. So now you have on display an elongated version because civil trials, and especially in the Circuit Court of Richmond, do take a long time, that this litigation could go right up into the 2021 elections. It could go on for a couple of years. There are depositions, discovery, and ultimately the standard, while it's not beyond a reasonable doubt, is still requires more than a he said, she said, and that's where this case may fall. In terms of him being a plaintiff, he then has to prove defamation or injury to his reputation in a way that, by the evidence standard, would have to demonstrate something more than it happened, no, it didn't. So in that case, I think there's a risk in that litigation that he's going to have to weigh very carefully. But I do agree with Joe that he is a wounded bird with a broken wing, and unless he does something, then that something not being done may harm his political future. Look, I believe, quite frankly, that the hearing in the House of Delegates could have gotten him the same result, and that him shying away from that perhaps was not the wisest thing. At the same time, he cannot claim vindication because the statute of limitations have expired in the respective jurisdictions where criminal charges could be brought. He cannot say that that's vindication.
Okay, so you're not in favor of this suit. He's going to try to run for governor in 2021. I have no doubt in mind he is going to run for governor, and he's going to run against McAuliffe after Terry tries to clear the field. Bill, does he have any chance at all?
Who? Fairfax?
Yes.
Does he have any chance? Well, I mean, time always tells. Joe is a great believer in this and has preached this to me. In politics, time heals a lot of wounds, and the minds can be very short in terms of memory, in terms of what happened in the past. But certainly, look, McAuliffe's problem is simply this. Do we need McAuliffe 2.0? We had McAuliffe 1.0. That's enough. And I think that's why you find that most people favor one-term governor, as we have here in Virginia. But it's going to be an interesting race because without McAuliffe clearing the field, you're going to have 5-6 people that want to become governor, think they can do it, think the time is right, where Virginia's turned blue in their minds, which I don't believe it has. And so you're going to have a very interesting race over there as well.
Joe, if Fairfax runs for governor, is he legit?
I used to teach history, and I used to tell folks that doesn't take a lot of guesswork when you're looking into the future to see what is going to take place. Look at what's happened in the past. History repeats itself. Governments repeat themselves. People's behavior repeats itself. So here's what I think. I think Governor McAuliffe is going to run for a second term as governor. I believe he will, to use your phrase, clear the field. Here's why. Herring is done. Herring, I've said, is not going to run for governor. His hypocrisy is a 100% blocker as far as him being able to run for governor. Jennifer McClellan has always taken the easy road. It's always been laid out for her, and I'm just, there's been an open path for her. She is the anointed one. She is the appointed one, and that's what happens. Now, will she get into a fist fight with Terry McAuliffe? Because Terry is a brawler from Syracuse. Okay, say what you want about him, but he's a fighter. Okay, and he and Jennifer get along now. But if Jennifer challenges him, he'll clobber her, and she doesn't have the fire in her belly to fight him, so she's gone. Justin Fairfax, if he doesn't sue and he doesn't prevail, and I think he will, he then is up against a mountain of money in a Democratic primary, and I think that would be the disqualifier. I think McAuliffe wins again. So, and who else? Who else is going to run against McAuliffe? Anybody besides the people I just mentioned?
Tom Perriello.
I got one. Joe Morrissey
Bill.
for governor 2021. I'm getting the numbers.
Senator Bill Stanley, thanks for being with us. Senator
Thank you, John.
B, Joe Morrissey, thanks for being with us.